Hi, everyone. I am Bobby Lehew. I'm the Chief Content Officer at commonsku. I've spent 26 years in the business. Prior to joining commonsku, I was the CEO at Robin, a distributor. We were around 10 million in sales, and we specialized in company stores. I'm so glad to be here with you today. This is a lot of fun for me to be able to help distributors learn how to get to the next level in their sales. Warren Buffett once wrote that he and his business partner, Charlie, never learn how to solve difficult business problems. They learn how to avoid them. And he credited their success with their ability to identify 1-foot hurdles they could step over rather than their ability to clear 7-footers. So this presentation is all about not so much trying to help you achieve things that are insurmountable as much as it is to identify 1-foot hurdles that you can easily step over. There's a beautiful book by Lars Midting called Norwegian Wood. It's about preparing for the brutally cold and long Norwegian winters. And in it, there's a crucial lesson from a 90-year-old Scandinavian who was chopping his own wood up until he was around 70. And he said that the key to being ready for these long winters is that the process of cutting and stacking should be done in small doses. This not only measures your strength across the scope of the work, but actually makes it more enjoyable. So as we walk through these steps, I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I don't want you to get, I know you're busy. I've walked in your shoes. I know you live in a deadline-driven business. Most of these 9 key things are things you can do as you go along your daily, weekly, and monthly activities. And when we wrap this session up today, we'll talk about the short list of actions you can deploy immediately. Today's session is a larger part of a series that we're running on our blog called The Path to 10 Million. In it are several articles that might be of help to you. So we're now on installment 8. The reason why I'm bringing this up, though, is to give you something that you can read later. And it's called The 5 Stages of Business Growth. Let's see if I can copy paste this for you here real quick. Actually, I'll send it to you at the end of the session. But it's a fantastic article, and it's something I like to remind distributors that most days feel like a sprint because of the business and because you're in a deadline-driven business. But really, entrepreneurship and a promotional products distributorship is more like a marathon than a sprint. So these things that we're going to talk about today are things you can do on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. We're going to lead with Howard Schultz with Starbucks, who said, to protect and preserve your core customers. The cost of losing your core customers and trying to get them back will be much greater than the cost of investing in them and trying to keep them. The reason we're leading with this is because this is our first key to growing your sales. And that key has to do with investing in your customers, making sure you're doing this. And here's what I mean. You're looking at a chart from a landmark study called From Promotion to Emotion, And it's about connecting B2B consumers to brands. It's a study of 3,000 B2B buyers that was intended to discover insights into the emotional connection of buyers to B2B brands. The brand benefits included 2 categories of attributes that are critical to our understanding. Why does your customer, number one, the real question here is, why does your customer buy from you? They buy from you for business value, but they also buy from you for personal value. Their business value would be obviously functional benefits, high performance, achieving their business goals, the business outcomes, but then their personal value to them, their personal benefits, being a better leader, simplifying their life as a buyer, the social benefits of fitting in with colleagues, admiration from others, confidence, excitement, self-image benefits. There's lots of reasons why our buyers buy. But there's an important reason we're getting into this topic to kick off, and that is because you should invest in your customers, and this is how you can gain their confidence, by eliminating their fears. Like B2B buyers fear losing time and effort if a purchase decision goes poorly. They fear losing credibility if they make a recommendation for an unsuccessful promotion. They also fear. Sorry, I lost my clicker there. They also fear that the more personal risk a purchase entails, that the more emotional buyers feel. The more they attach themselves to the brand if this provides value and eliminates risk. So the number one key to growing to million sales, and whether you're growing to 1 million, 5 million, or 10 million, is to invest in your customers. Do the basics. I know this is pretty simple, but those follow-up calls on orders and on the success of the project. This isn't just tactical, by the way. This isn't just, hey, did you get the pens okay? This is, hey, John, did you get the pens? Great. How did the trade show go? Was it a success? What did you learn? Anything I can do better to help make the next event shine? So this is emotionally investing in your customer's outcome. You know, Howard Schultz also said from Starbucks that Starbucks coffee is exceptional, but emotional connection is our true value proposition. And this is a subtle, he said, this is a subtle concept. It's often too subtle for many business people to replicate or cynics to appreciate. The other thing you can do to invest in your customers is do a quarterly or 6-month check-in that's not tied to sales. And this is critical because you can actually do things like listen for their company calendar. You can just check in to see how they're doing. The reason why this lesson was so important to me and for important to me to share to you early in your career, particularly if you just started, is that if you can get this into the muscle memory of your work, then when you get bigger and as you grow, this will just become a habit. And it's so crucial. We had a customer one time where we had lots of transactions going on, and this actually happened a few times, but this one time was real pronounced. And in our 6-month checkup, we started deciding that we would share with them all of the orders that we did in the past 6 months for them. Because what happens with a customer is that if you have 3 projects go south on you that don't go right, and they happen in a row, the customer gets the impression that you're not taking care of things, that things are falling apart. When in reality, when we sat down with this VP of marketing, we were able to show that we had over 100 transactions in the past 6 months. And that yes, 3 things did go wrong. Yes, they were concentrated, but it gave her context completely into our solution and what we were doing. So these quarterly and 6-month check-ins are huge. It's about investing emotionally in your customer. Remember what your customer buys. They want their business objectives met, but twice as much they want to know that things are secure, safe, and they don't like risk. I mean, corporate lethargy is beautiful when it's working for you, but when it's working against you, it's a really difficult thing. So you have to unstick their opinions from time to time. So this is, again, we're on key 1, investing in your customers. Investing in your customers also means virtuals and mainly spec samples. Now, I'm sorry, we should have had the hand raiser here so we could ask how many people are doing these, but actually we'll do a poll here in a minute. But if you're not doing virtuals with your supplier partners and making this a regular habit, this is a huge way to gain insight into how your customer purchases, and then to do spec samples. And I'm sure we all know what a spec sample is, just what it sounds like. It's a one-off for a client of their logo. It's a great way to break into product categories that you're not selling, which we'll get to in a minute. But spec samples are so underutilized by even some of the strongest professionals in the business, and they are one of the best ways to break into new product categories, to impress a client. Work with your supplier partners to do more and more specs. If you could, even get on a cycle where you're doing specs for a client every 6 months, every quarter, not just when a spec sample is offered on sale or when a supplier decides to do it, but think proactively about spec samples for your customers. We'll get into that in a little more detail here in a minute. Another thing you can do to invest in your customers is remember the soft touches, the light touches, like thank yous and on anniversary gifts. I have to credit Cliff Quicksow said this one time about anniversary gifts. You know that if you develop an anniversary program for your client, that you can show in your reporting usually, or hopefully you can think through this, or you can make a note of it, where your customer, the first time they ever bought from you, if you showed up on the anniversary date of when their first order came through for you with a special promotional product that's highlights your creativity and shows what you can do, it means so much to the customer. That's investing in them emotionally. Same thing with holidays and referrals, which we'll touch on in just a moment as well. I have a poll here. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see how often do you present fresh and proactive ideas to your customers. On the right-hand side of your screen, I'm going to launch the poll. Curious. Let's take your number 1 customer. Think of your number 1 customer. How often do you present fresh, proactive ideas to your number 1 customer? By the way, I'm typing into the chat. Why I should have done this to begin with, making sure you guys can hear me okay. Can someone chat back? So here we go. Back to our presentation. How often do you present fresh and proactive ideas to your number 1 customer? All right, there we go. Quarterly's winning. Monthly, weekly, 5%. Good, about 76% have voted. Here's why I bring this up. Is that the number one reason a client leaves? The number one reason a client leaves is because they don't get enough new ideas from a distributor. The reason we're obsessing a little bit about this, your current clientele, is the strongest way to build a foundation for referrals and for future business is to make sure that your existing customers love you. If I heard it once in my career, I heard it 100 times. If I called a customer who was leaving us, and whether it was my fault, whether it was a sales rep that was working with them, I would ask them, why are you leaving? Often, if it wasn't a blatant problem like productivity or errors, then it would be they are not giving me enough ideas. They're not giving me enough ideas. Thanks, by the way, for asking some questions over on the right-hand side. This is a huge statistic. You've heard it before, but it's so critical that it's 5 times more expensive to acquire a new customer than it is to retain an existing one. 5 times more expensive to acquire a new customer than it is to retain an existing one. And that's huge. I've seen this figure, by the way, upwards of 25. 25. Key number 2, grow widely. Here's where we're going to get deep into this topic about how to really grow your sales with your customers. And this is so crucial. But this is about getting into the confidence of your buyer, understanding why they buy from you, making sure that things are going well, and then selling to them widely. You've probably seen this before. If you're not a member of PPAI, the Promotional Products Association, I encourage you to join. You can visit them at ppai.org, but they have a few charts that are critical. This one, to me, is not as important as the next one, but it is good to analyze. Take your top 10 clients, for example, and analyze what it is that you're selling to them. You might be selling them wearables, drinkware, bags, writing instruments. Those are all the normal things. But what about a recognition and awards program? A recognition program or awards program, the residuals on that are huge. You can develop a custom awards program that will last for 10 years. So there's all kinds of categories here. This is a good exercise. I recommend it. If you're a solo entrepreneur, or maybe you have a team, you can do this quarterly, annually. There's all kinds of ways that you can utilize this chart and look at your top 10 clients. But you should increase the number of categories that you're selling to your existing customers. And then this is an odd little tip. This isn't that huge, but I always think it's fascinating in this business that every region has a key product you should be selling. Have you figured out what your region's key product is? This is kind of funny. It's like I said, it's not huge, but if you sell to the tech community, you obviously do a lot of t-shirts. So you should double down on design. You should double down on your knowledge of t-shirts. If you were in Washington, D.C., you know how many suits and ties are there? You would sell a lot of lapel pins. I've talked to distributors up there about this. If you were in the deep South, you probably sell caps, a lot of ball caps, a lot of trucker caps. If you're up north where it's cold and in Canada, you probably sell a lot of toques. Hope I didn't butcher that word, but you probably sell a lot of those. So it's fun to consider this. Look at your top 10 clients. Look at your sales over the past 6 months. In fact, to make it easy, just look at your number one customer. You can usually find what it is that you sell by looking at that. Number 2 is the program category. To me, this one is crucial. It's a little more insightful, I think, than the categories themselves. This one is really about getting into your customer's purpose. And one of the things I love about this is there are 6 questions for every project you do for a customer that you can ask. Now, I will admit, you may not have time to ask all of these questions all the time, but it's important to ask these occasionally, especially when you know there's something big going on. Those 6 questions are, who is the recipient? Let me give you a simple example. Remember a customer calling me one time and asking if they had a trade show coming up, and this was for a special event. I didn't know anything about it yet at this point. They just said, can we do pins? Can you guys give me a quote on pins? And I asked, sure, who's the recipient? And they said, well, it's machinists. I have no idea what a machinist is, so I kept asking questions. What do you mean, what is a machinist and what do they do? So we have a chronic problem. We're a manufacturing company, and our production is getting slowed because we don't have enough machinists on the line to do the job. Okay, so you want pens so you can hand out at a trade show. What emotion do you want to trigger? And typically a customer might look at you like you're crazy or say, what do you mean, what emotion do I want to trigger? Yeah, what do you want to happen with this giveaway? What is the emotion you want to trigger? Well, we want them to love us. We want them to want to come work for us. Okay, that's good to know. When will this take place? Well, the event's coming up in about 3 weeks. All right. Where will this take place? Well, it's at a trade show, but it's alongside other manufacturing companies, and it's not that big of a deal where. It is a big deal to me, by the way, as I'm asking the questions. Why is this important to you? He already hinted at it earlier, and he said, well, the CEO thinks this is crucial. We can't get production up. He just told me something, by the way. He just told me that his budget for pens was $250, but this project was crucial, or whatever it was, $500, $1,000. This project is crucial. The revenue that might be waiting there for a project like this, if this is getting in the way of production. And number 6, how will these be distributed? Well, we're just going to trade show, Bobby. I just need to hand out some pens. All right, how about this? What if we did a pocket tool? Because these machinists likely love tools, and they will beat a path to your trade show booth. And how about we did this? If this is this critical to you, why don't you do a pre-mailer to ensure, and we'll do a promotional item to get their attention to make sure they make it to your booth. And how about this? After the event, you identify the 6 qualified candidates that were the most critical, and we create a special gift package to welcome them to the interview. If it's that difficult to get machinists and you're having a hard time, why don't you see what just happened there? Just by asking 6 simple questions, we're uncovering more and more buying opportunities. Here's the fun part about this. You may not get another sale out of this, but what's going on subconsciously with your buyer is that you're positioning yourself as the expert. You are the person that's going to win. You can do this with any project. Let's say you have an executive administrative assistant that calls you because they have a retreat going on. And in the retreat, they you don't know anything about it. They just say, we have a treat. We're taking folks to the Bahamas. And you ask, well, who's the recipient? Well, these are sales winners from our sales contest for the year. Oh, what kind of contest? Then you get into the details. What emotion do you want to trigger? Thankfulness, gratefulness. When will this take place? Where will it take place? And by the way, she already answered the where, but if you didn't know the where, you can see how many more opportunities, sunscreen, towel, awards, luggage, all kinds of things that would unlock things for you to sell. Why is this important? Well, this is the biggest sales year that we've ever had. They just told me they have a lot more budget than they're probably spending to me with us. And then how will it be distributed? There's all kinds of things that these 6 questions can unlock more selling opportunities. But again, don't worry if you don't have them. We'll send those to you. So key number 2, as we're continuing on here, grow widely. Target those categories. Target categories. What happens in the buyer's mind, by the way, is they segment you. They will determine what you can and cannot do because they will decide you have a specialty, even though you can sell lots of different things. I remember selling to a steel building company, and I had a great relationship with the buyer. And I was walking out of his headquarters one day. We're laughing. We had a great time. And I see boxes lined up against the wall. And I asked him, what are the boxes? He said, they're caps. What do you mean caps? This guy's buying $30,000 to $50,000 from me annually, and that's probably a $10,000 order. He said, well, I didn't know you did caps. And this is early on. But this is what happens in the buyer's mind. They segment you. This is why you ask the question, why aren't they buying that from me? They don't know. Go back to those spec samples and those virtuals. That's how you can interject yourself into the conversation by proving your capability. Your suppliers will make you look so good if you utilize them and if you're proactive about it. An easy, quick study is to analyze purchases from your biggest client in a 6-month period, to look at those categories and to look at why they buy. I didn't cover this on the previous chart, but if you look at those purchases in a 6-month period, just with your biggest client, you'll find out that they might be buying from you for onboarding gifts for employees or all kinds of things, but they might not be buying from you from their safety department or other areas that are touching emotional opportunities for you. So you can do that. I mentioned this. You can introduce new categories by spec or virtual mock-ups, and then win your client's heart with design. Use your vendor partners. So the best way to grow into a new category is to use specs or virtuals and to use your vendor partners to make you look good. You could partner with Rumi Brand Suite and send them your customer's logo, the customer's website, and they will come back with a spectacular suite of products for you to show your customer if you're not selling tote bags to that customer. It's a great way to break into product categories. Target seasons. This might be a little obvious, but I wanted to go ahead and throw it in there in case you're brand new to the business. Make sure you're targeting spring event seasons. The spring and fall both have the same kind of upswings: trade shows, golf tournaments, fundraisers, corporate meetings. But in the fall, of course, you also have seasonal specifics like jackets, gloves, There's lots of things you can sell. So target seasons, holiday promotions. I've known sales reps through the years that will 40% of their year will be in the fourth quarter gift giving season. 40% of their year could be in the fourth quarter gift giving season. That's not everybody. I actually think that's an anomaly, but it just shows you what can happen when you start targeting seasons. We used to do, for example, we would give Thanksgiving gifts to our customers for a couple of reasons. One, we wanted to stand out from all of the Christmas gifts that were being handed out, but we also wanted to jumpstart holiday sales. So it's a great way to stay top of mind during that season where they're actually a little looser with the budget as well. And then the company calendar. Remember that for every quarter or every 6-month meeting I suggested you do? This is a great time to sit down and find out what's going on in their company calendar in the next 6 months. See, the customer has you in a need-to-know basis. They will only tell you information about their business that they think you need to know, and you have to remove the need-to-know barrier so you can uncover more selling opportunities. And the way you do this is in a non-selling situation. You show up and maybe it's right after you delivered on a huge order. You schedule a meeting with them and you just ask them, have a series of questions about what's going on in the upcoming 6 months. You'll be shocked at the number of opportunities that you can uncover with a company calendar. So remove the need to know barrier. By the way, I recommend that you look at this, you consider this every 90 days, that you think ahead for your customer in 90-day segments. So customers don't think quarterly, but salespeople typically do. But it's great to get in a 90-day time frame. If you can do 6 months, that's great. But if you could ever get into a 90-day time frame where you're helping your customer look forward to the next quarter, you'll become your customer's hero just because you're helping them stay on point. So who else buys? You might be selling to the marketing department. A lot of us sell to marketing departments, but PPAI did this study of who else is buying promotional products. And they found that there were at least 2, if not 3 or 4 more departments that are buying promotional products outside of marketing. And so you'll see on the right-hand side there of that chart, sales department, operations, research, IT, executive. So you can target. We'll go into walk through LinkedIn in a little bit to make sure you can get a few tips on how to do this. But one of my biggest lessons was we took our top 10 customers, top 20 at that time, and we analyzed who our buyers were. We analyzed them based on their title. What titles are we selling to? We found out that we were selling to a particular title, but we also looked at departments. And we'll get into the titles in a minute because I have another story for you down the road. We got into departments, and we landed this very large oil company because we were in an oil and gas market. And the buyer was in office services. I'd never even heard of that department. And so for other oil and gas companies, we were targeting marketing departments. But what we found out was that we were targeting the wrong department. Marketing in oil and gas industries did not do the thing that they do in most other corporate environments. Come to find out, all of the other oil and gas companies had an office services department too, and that's where their promotional product purchasing was taking place. So once you know a department that you sell to, you can use that intelligence to sell to in the same industry to another department in another industry in the same industry. It was a big lesson to me because it was easy to target at that point. So target departments across the same industry you're selling to. And don't forget about your influencers who are designers. People who are designers are very influential in the buying decision. So you might be selling into marketing, but don't forget, designers that you meet are strong partners for the future of your business. One idea, just a small idea, you could develop a small promotional product campaign that really demonstrates your creativity, and you could drop that campaign to half a dozen people at half a dozen different departments at one of your clients' companies at the same time. It would be a fun way to start the conversation inside the walls that you can't get through. All right, the number one way to grow. We're going to look at the number one way to grow your business by far. 84% of B2B decision makers start the buying process with a referral. 84%, that's huge, 84%. So the question for us is, how do we get more referrals? How do we get more referrals? Here's the number one secret to getting more referrals. Number one secret, ask at the heroic moment. You know, you're delivering for your clients all the time. To you, it's a normal matter of course for business. But when I go back to that emotional why customers buy from you, you're saving them all the time. For example, when the customer forgot to order for their big event, You saved them with a 24-hour rush. That extra TLC you provided on a small but important order for the CEO that you did for your buyer, but for the buyer's boss, it was huge. You became the hero at that moment. When you rescued a project that shipped incorrectly, or you came up with the perfect substitute because of low stock, you became the hero. Now, again, that's normal course of business, and that's what customers would expect. But on a few of these, you truly can be the hero. Maybe it's your flawless execution of a very complex project. What often happens when you're going to ask for referrals, if you go to a buyer now that likes you a lot and you ask if there are other people that can buy, you may get an answer, but largely they're going to be so busy they can't even think of it. And also, they don't know who else buys. They might know a few people in their company or a few of their colleagues out there that are in their networking circles, but they don't know. So it behooves you to do a little homework, which we'll get to in a minute. But more importantly, the one thing they don't have is they don't have a reason to give you, to invest in you. But when you've saved them, when you've helped them, they're suddenly emotionally connected to you and they want to help. We would do all kinds of crazy things. One time we had a red hot referral program where we delivered this creatively packaged red hots on Valentine's Day to try and get more referrals. We did all kinds of things, but it felt like we just weren't getting enough. Some of those worked. If you can develop the muscle memory where you're asking for a referral every time that your customer says, "Oh, wow, thank you," then you will get more referrals. This is the number one way to grow your business. If there's anything else, if there's one thing that you can take away from this presentation, I hope that that's it. Develop the muscle memory to land more referrals. Key number 4, ideal book and right fit. The ideal book of business and the right fit. Excuse me there. The question you can ask yourself when you're early in your career, or maybe you're at the $250,000 level, $500,000 level, is to ask this question constantly. Keep it in the back of your mind. What is your ideal book of business? I know Distributor Right Sleeve talks about this in terms of 20 by 50 and 50 by 20. Does your ideal book of business look like 20 $50,000 customers, 20 customers who are spending $50,000 annually with you a year? Or is this 50 customers who are spending $20,000 with you a year? Fewer clients, you'll achieve greater depth, and you can beware of the 80-20 rule. Make sure that 80% of your customers or 20% of your customers are not driving 80% of your business. So we'll tell you, there's a lot of distributors. I know it was our struggle that this is alive and well. And you're probably sitting there too, and you're a little, crushed by that statement, being reminded of how much business your number one customer is doing with you. But keep this in the back of your mind, because you can work toward this goal. You might not achieve it perfectly, but there's this really, there's this impulse in us to want to land the elephant, and then the elephant consumes you and becomes your life and your business. Think of your ideal book of business, not in just terms of gross sales, but also in terms of right fit. Good revenue, great relationship, matching culture. When you look at your clients and you start to map who it is that you fit well with, and you're thinking, look at the gross revenue, look at the gross profit. Think of that relationship you have with the buyer, with the company's culture, that there are future opportunities. Look for that right fit. Keep these things. These aren't things that aren't necessarily actionable right now. But they are things you can keep in the back of your mind so that you can shape this, because as you grow, you're going to get more and more referrals. You're going to have a problem. If you don't have it now, I hope you have the problem of turning down business someday. And these 2 tips will help you and keep you sort of on a path of well-being as you sell. Jamie Watson of Certified Marketing Consultants, she's leading a workshop at our Skewcamp next weekend, and she says that no customer should command. This is an optimum. This isn't like most of us don't achieve this, but it's an optimum. A customer should never command more than 10% of your sales. Tough to achieve, but just something that you should know and keep in the back of your mind. Okay, key number 5, build your network. Build your network. How many people have done this? I wonder how many people have actually done this, where you have sat down with a pen and paper and you scratched out your network. The restaurants you attend regularly, the park you go to, the bank you bank at, the doctors, the hospitals. You could have a massive mind map while you're done with it. If you're brand new to the business and you sat down with me and you said, I don't even know where to begin, this would be the very first thing we would do, is that we would sit down and map your network. Give me a drink of water real quick. Sorry, folks. Any questions, by the way, over on the right? Don't forget about that. On the right-hand side, you can type any questions in the questions box, or you can use the chat. Mapping your network. That's pretty self-explanatory, but it's so crucial. It's so crucial. Another networking story. This was big for us. We were really involved for several years in the local chambers of commerce type organizations. These were general purpose associations. And you might be involved in your chamber as well, and it might be very successful. But when we analyzed our clients, we realized that the majority of them held the title of marketing or communications. Because one of the things that was happening to us when we go to general purpose conventions, like just general business conventions, we would often see a lot of competitors there, and moreover, we didn't have a chance to really shine. We did some special work for the marketing communications community, but it was kind of lost in this, this massive group of other folks who were selling promotional products. So we decided we would exit the chambers and the general purpose business associations and double down on where our customers were. So looking at our titles, looking at the businesses they were involved in, we found out that most of them were marketing, so we got heavily involved. We doubled down in the marketing association. And in associations like, for example, we actually found out there were quite a few that had communications in their title, which was interesting. So we got involved in the International Association of Business Communicators, and in the Public Relations Society of America, and in the Business to Business Marketing Association. I was talking to a distributor up in the Northeast about this phenomenon, how we decided, and this is a while back, but it was a big shift for us because it meant we suddenly started concentrating our prospecting and our marketing to the right audience. Instead of shotgunning to everybody, we were able to get to the right organizations and the people that were serious about buying. But this, back to this distributor up in the Northeast, she sold to a lot of legal lawyers and attorneys, and I had no idea, but there is a legal marketing association. And she had got so many leads through this. So look at your network, find out your titles. And let's say you're brand new to the business. You don't have a big book of business. Think about who you want to sell to and then get involved. What titles, departments, professions do you sell to or do you want to sell to? And this is a big key. Get involved, get in the board level, get in the committee level, but get engaged. Do not think for a second as a promotional products professional that you can just show up at these events, shake hands, and get business. It is a miracle if it works out that way. You have to get involved. You have to invest in the organizations, and then they in turn will invest in you. And in the promotional products industry, it's fun, right? You can use your industry strength to demonstrate your creativity and capabilities. They should never have a gathering that there isn't some fun giveaway or some targeted marketing that goes out to all of the association members. You have a way to flex your creative muscle with these organizations in a way that you can use to even demonstrate and show other clients. Just a fantastic way to do. So expand your network. Think hard about the titles that you sell to, the organizations that you're involved in. Danny Rosen, some of you might know with Brand Fuel. You might not know him. He's a large distributor in Raleigh, North Carolina. A lot of folks know Danny, but he says, get away from your desk, your PC, your mobile phone, your routine. In the digital age, human to human relationships and interactions are changing. And I love what he said in this quote, as Amazon and other online sales channels loom large and close by, visiting with your client is the new competitive advantage. Matty Toombs, who's the vice president of sales for Shumsky, he'll be leading a workshop at our conference next week as well. And I asked him if he could identify one key secret to his sales, and he shared a story with me. So he was on his way to the airport, by the way, when we were talking on the phone. And that very morning, he drove an hour out of his way to go see a prospect. The day before, he had submitted a quote. It was a several $1,000 order. He'd sent a quote to the prospect, probably with half a dozen other distributors. But that morning, he went out an hour out of his way to go follow up in person, to do a drop-by, which is pretty brave, and see if the customer got the quote okay and see if they had any questions. He asked me, Bobby, how many people do you think did that? Now, I know you don't have time. I know you're busy. I know all the reasons. There are reasons too. But consider that that might be the new competitive advantage. So when I go back to some tactics like getting involved, maybe it's an annual technology conference that goes on in your market, get involved. Get out from behind your desk. Because the one thing this business will do, it will keep you at your desk because you're in a deadline-driven business. Key number 6, prospect perpetually. Prospect perpetually. And I'm going to show you how you can do that without panicking yourself. So this is something to keep in mind. 80% of your future business will come from just 20% of your existing clients. That's a scary stat. 80% will come from just 20% of your existing clients. This was from Gartner Group, I believe is who this was from. This quote was from. So there are a couple of lies we tend to tell ourselves, and we don't mean to lie to ourselves, but we do. And prospecting is one of those categories that we say, you know what, I'll make that a priority when I have some free time, or as soon as business slows down, I'm going to focus on prospecting. The problem is that you're in a business that looks like this, right? You're constantly trying to meet deadlines. You're in a deadline-driven business, so this is how it feels. You're constantly trying to hit those deadlines. Here is the problem in the industry. If you look back in the 12 months, at your 12 months sales history, look back at 12 months, and you'll see that your orders actually looked more like a roller coaster, that your sales looked like a roller coaster. So February, your sales were good. June, your sales might have been crazy, but there were seasons where sales were slower. Guess what? Business had slowed down at that time too. You were handling less transactions. Now here's the problem. You're so busy, you're so exhausted, and good for you. I hope you're crazy exhausted because that means good business. That the peaks are invigorating. They're so invigorating. You thrive in that environment. You do well, but then you also are exhausted. And so when you come down emotionally, and now you think, okay, now I'm ready to focus on prospecting. And hopefully this problem happens for you. Suddenly it gets busy again and you have no time. This is what I call the industry treadmill. If I've seen it once, I've seen it 1,000 times. Proactive creative work is the most difficult work that we can do. This is why that little red line you see in the 12-month span of your business, it's so critical that if new business development is important, if 80% of your business is going to go away, and you need to reach out to new prospects, then you have to develop a system that doesn't try and eat the elephant at one time. You're trying to eat the whole elephant in those slow seasons. Now I'm going to prospect. And you barely get it off the ground and you get busy again and you get distracted. What you have to do is you have to eat the elephant in bite-sized pieces. You have to develop a very tiny habit of doing sales along the way. So here's what I mean. I was talking to the vice president of sales with a very large distributor. They're around 50 million, had over 100 sales reps. And I asked him one time, I said, is it too much to ask of our sales reps that they reach out to 2 to 3 to 5? Am I not being aggressive enough? And here he is with all his experience and with all of this experience working with a lot of salespeople. And he said, Bobby, if they would just reach out to one prospect a week, that would be 52 a year. So this got me, I've thought about this a lot through the years because it's really difficult. I honor what you do. I respect that you are distracted, that you live in a deadline-driven industry. But if you could make it a goal to reach out to one new prospect a week, that's doable. And that's that little red line. Instead of thinking that in June you're going to start prospecting, you're going to prospect once a week. That's it, just to one contact. And you'll be shocked at the results that can happen. And if you can just land 2 customers throughout the year that become $50,000 customers or $150,000 customers or who knows, then you're getting to that million, you're getting to that 5 million. So a marketing campaign, one prospect each week. Do a handwritten note each week. Maybe that's what you start with. Developing the muscle memory. Remember what we're trying to do here. We're trying to take this very difficult prospecting task, break it down into bite-sized business development pieces. Maybe it's a drip marketing campaign. This is a little heavier. But maybe you're just going to touch bases with that customer 3 times. But it's just going to be in little tiny Monday morning increments. And another tip is to make LinkedIn your bestie. Make LinkedIn your best friend. I'm astonished at what you can discover through LinkedIn. And I'll show you an example. Here I am on LinkedIn, and I'm connected. There's a let's say this is the company I sell to, a company called Paycom, and I go do a search for them, and I see all my first connections. These are all the folks that I'm connected to first, right? I already know these folks, so I don't have to sell to them, so to speak. But I really don't know who else in the company. I don't know who I don't know in the company. So I can do another search for the same company and look for who are the second connections. So when I go back to that chart, remember when we go back to what other departments are you not selling to? Suddenly I have a connection. And I'm gonna put the puzzle together here for you. Remember the referrals? Remember when you're going to your busy customer and you're asking them for referrals? They can't think for you. They don't know. But because you're doing this little tiny task every Monday morning, doing a little homework and research on your customers, you're able to say to your prospect after delivering on that awesome project, hey, Cindy, you know Chad, the CEO, I'm sure he does gifts from time to time. Is there any way I can visit with the executive assistant, or maybe you can find the executive assistant? That can be the conversation. There's ways that you can actually do some data mining. It doesn't take you a lot of time, so that when you go to your customer who loves you and trusts you, you're ready to ask intelligent questions that lead to results. Here's another thing. This is a tip. This is a little creepy. I'll admit. But did you know that you can take your best buyer, and if they haven't, and by default, this I think is still open on LinkedIn. By default, you can see everyone they're connected to, everyone they're connected to, every colleague that they work beside, every person they work with. This is from one of my friends' profile. I blocked that out just so he would have been cool with it, but I wanted just wanted to show you this. So one of my biggest points with LinkedIn is you should never have the excuse that you don't know who to sell to. Never. Because of LinkedIn. For example, you can go on LinkedIn right now and search for the director of marketing, and you can find out all of the directors of marketing within a 20-mile radius of where you're sitting right now, within a 5-mile radius, 1-mile radius. Fantastic tool. A tip I would recommend, double down on LinkedIn, dig deep, attend a class, seminar, spend an hour. If you don't have that kind of time, every Monday morning, just get in it and mess around with it. Look at your clients, see who they are. The more familiar you are, subscribe to their emails. Make sure you're getting notified of updates, but make LinkedIn your bestie. One tip I wanted to offer too, industries to target. We won't spend a lot of time on this, but I just wanted you to see it. Educational institutions, financial, you can use LinkedIn to look for these. Director of marketing in the hospitals, healthcare, not-for-profit organizations. One other thing, we have a podcast called Skewcast, and that's me on the right, and that's Mark in the hoodie on the left. And there's episode 21 is tiny tasks for ginormous sales gain. This whole we broke down this. We expand a little bit more on how to do tiny tasks for great sales gain. So it's a 40-minute podcast episode. I encourage you to listen to. I can send that to you here at the close of this as well. Just want to recommend it to you. Key number 7: begin to think systems. Begin to think systems. This is huge. This is huge for your future business development. If there's one book I recommend to new entrepreneurs in particular, it's The E-Myth Revisited: Why Most Small Businesses Don't Work and What to Do About It. Systems, the word systems tends to scare people, particularly salespeople, but they actually have systems. When you woke up in the morning and you got dressed and you shaved and you ate breakfast, that was the system. Systems are simply a way of doing things. That's what systems are. And for you, you need to begin as you grow. Now, keep in mind, we're trying to build a foundation for growth. As you grow, you need to begin to think of your systems. And a lot of us don't think of systems. We just think sales, sales, sales. Systems run the business and people run the systems. So right now, you probably have processes that manage your business, from your pre-sales, customer management, to your presentations, to your estimates, sales order acknowledgments, artwork. As you grow, if you don't streamline these, then you will not be able to grow. You will create the funnel system where you can't get any more through the little tiny funnel that you've built. So just be aware of this. Define these systems right now with a good exercise. You remember the exercise with networking that I told you about? Go back and sketch out that, but also sketch this out. Ask yourself, what are your systems? And keep this in mind. It's one of those things that kind of simmer on the back burner of your mind. Because what you don't want is this as you grow. As you grow, you don't want to keep trying to, you can't run business through systems that are not streamlined. You kind of want this, something a little more modern, fast, and efficient. Okay, key number 8, establishing your KPIs. Establish your key metrics early in your career and you will be handsomely rewarded for it. So average margin per customer. Many of us think of average margin per project, or we think of average margin in our overall gross sales, but we don't think of average margin per customer. And my suggestion is this is a 6-month review. That you don't need to review this every week or every month. This is just something you look at on a 6-month basis. You know, with projects with customers, you win some and lose some. You drop your margin down to, I'm going to just throw a random number. I'm not suggesting this. You drop your margin down to 20% on an order so you can get it, and then you make it up for it on a 50% margin on apparel somewhere. So you're going to average in the 35 to 40 to 45% range somewhere. You should be. So you analyze this per customer. A lot of folks will analyze this in their entire book of business, but they will not analyze it per customer. Also, your per client minimum annual sales threshold. You should have a minimum annual sales threshold that you want to work with a client. We would have this discussion often that we don't want to serve any clients who are under 20,000 in annual sales. We don't want to serve any client who's under 5,000. For you, it might be 5,000, it might be 20, it might be 100. But be sure you have this threshold. Now, when you're early in your career, you don't have this luxury. And I understand that. You will develop this as you move along. Quote to order ratio, how many quotes you're doing to the number of orders you're doing each year. This is a 6-month review. This is huge, by the way. It's huge because of what I'm going to show you on the next screen. And then your average customer size, total number of sales divided by your number of customers. Actually, we had a customer that was a sales organization, and I loved one metric that they used, and it was called client count. Client count. We don't use that metric in this industry. We use gross sales as a metric. Client count is a huge metric. I think it's something you should measure every 6 months. And then my favorite is the 6-month review of gross profit and declining order. This was my favorite report to run because we often think too much in terms of gross sales. And when you do this, when you look at your book of business and you look at your clients and your annual sales in a 6-month review process by gross profit and declining order, you discover that gross sales tells you who you work for. Gross sales tells you who you work for. Gross profit tells you who's working out for you. Not a profound statement, but it's something you have to keep in mind as you're developing business with your customers. Gross profit. You can be doing crazy business with a customer. This happened to me once where we had great business, great big brand, and we found out actually our sample costs were outrageous and our quote to order ratio was 10 to 1. We were working 10 times for every order. And so the gross sales, we thought that, that was working out. But we found out that the gross profit and actually the net profit on that particular customer was really not. They really weren't working for us. Key number 5, strengthen your supplier partnerships. You already know this as an AIM member. This is huge. This is a part of your business. It's a part of your DNA. But there's a distinction that you as AIM supplier partners, your AIM supplier partners, you should think of them as partners and not resources. This is something that I learned from Harvey Mackey of Whole Foods from his book, Conscious Capitalism. We talked about the ecosystems that manage our businesses. If you ever mapped out the ecosystem of your distributorship, who are all the important people from your employee to your customer, to the UPS driver that delivers product for you every day, to the mailman. These things sound so unimportant, but they're so critical. They're part of your ecosystem. And your supplier partners, you would not have a business without your supplier partners. And you should start engaging with them like partners and not resources. And what do I mean by that? I mean simple things like sharing with them how you're doing, sitting down and talking about clients. Share your clients' information with them. Some people are so scared. You'll find it so liberating when you do this because they can ideate for you better. They can show you better ideas. They can help you. The other reason you do this is there are 2 ways to grow, from the top and from the bottom. You can grow top sales and you grow the bottom line. And the more you can work with your partners, the more leverage you will have. So the fewer suppliers you have, the more leverage you have. I know a distributor who's 20 million in sales. 70% of their business goes through 20 suppliers. That's an astounding number. It's an astounding number. And it's something that I encourage you to work toward. Fewer suppliers, more leverage. We did a study in our business at one time, and I think we had something like 162 suppliers in a 6-month period. You know how bad that is on the back end of things? Fewer suppliers, more leverage. Develop your top 20 to 50 supplier list if you've not already done it, and invest time with your suppliers. Engage with them. They're your partners, not just a resource. They can streamline your ideation, and they can really help you. So in summary, the 9 keys, here they are. And I have this crazy image because what these are the foundation for your growth. If you get these things down early in your career, early in the stages of your growth, you can blow past 1 million to 3 million to 5 million to 10 million to 20. Invest in your existing customers, grow widely in categories with existing clients, develop your referral reflex, determine your ideal book of business and your right fit, build your network, prospect perpetually. Begin to think in terms of systems, establish and monitor your KPIs, and strengthen your supplier partners. Remember, back to our wood stacking analogy, victory is not won in miles, but in inches. Win a little now, hold your ground later, and win a little bit more. The top 5 things you can do now. We're going to open it up for questions. Top 5 things you can do now to jumpstart your growth. 1 is target existing accounts, cross-department, and sell seasonally. That's the fastest way to grow. Target those existing accounts, cross-department, and sell seasonally. Number 2, turn the art of referrals into a reflex action. Turn the art of referrals into a reflex action. Number 3, 1 new client outreach per week, 1 new prospect outreach per week. That's it, just 1. What I like to suggest is you maximize Molasses Mondays. Everybody, no matter what industry you're in, there's typically a slower day of the week. As a distributor, I found that Friday afternoons were crazy. I think clients were trying to clean off their desks. And I found that Monday mornings were incredibly slow. Monday mornings was the perfect time. Maximize those slow mornings for your client outreach, for your prospect outreach. That's where you can focus on that.